Once upon a time, millions of Canadians were raised in small two-bedroom bungalows built after World War II and lived great lives and had no problem. And it was something affordable for a working class Canadian to live and thrive in and raise a family. Those days are long gone, but they have to come back if we're ever going to see Canadians into home ownership. To talk more about it, thrilled to be joined by Paul Micucci. Paul, how are you?
Good, Jim. How you doing?
Good. I bring that up because my wife grew up, her parents were Dutch immigrants. They grew up in a small two-bedroom bungalow in Scarborough, which is a suburb of Toronto, and it was very similar to these small post-World War II homes that were built across Canada, and millions of Canadian families were raised in it, no problem.
Yeah. Well, and war homes still exist, down most of my life I've lived in Etobicoke.
Yeah.
So quite frankly, and in Etobicoke, there's still, when you get closer to the lake, an abundance of old two-bedroom war homes. And developers for years, because of the lot size, would take them, knock them down, and rebuild, but no more. So they were looking at it, the economic model, and it was fine when land values, quite frankly, were going off at 200, 250, 500. You could pick up a property and you can make it work. It doesn't work anymore, quite frankly. So what the interesting part, we'll get into the math on the homes in a minute, because it's very important. And a lot of you, know the math, but we'll go over it in the show. It's really important to kind of look at that because, okay, now we have these old war homes. They're now 70 years old, Jim.
Yeah.
So if I'm a young Canadian and I'm starting out like I did, when I was young, I went and bought my first home that I did buy. I bought it and it had 17 people from Ethiopia living in it. And my father told me I was crazy. And I said, no. I said, I'm getting this at a really low price. Right? And I said, I'm not going to use it as a rental home. I'm going to gut it and rebuild it. Because the four walls were, I said to my dad, and I'd grown up with my dad who had renovated homes his whole life. I said, I think the structure is good, Dad. I've seen homes.
Like the bones were good.
The bones are good. The bones were terrible, by the way. Oh. I was totally wrong, right? So I got into this home and I had to demo. Like I literally took it down to the stud, took all the insulation out. I rebuilt the home and it was a nightmare, right? I lived in the home, but it really was a nightmare to do, but I did it. But remember, when I'm doing it, that home is only 40 years old.
Yes.
Or no, not less. It actually was 30 years old.
Yeah.
So that was a 30-year-old home, which was beaten up at that time. That home's still standing. So I drive by that home. So every once in a while, I do that deja vu drive where I go around.
That's the place I used to live in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And because they're mostly in Etobicoke, I do this round trip drive. So I do this drive and I go look at it and I think to myself, wow, that house is still standing. Then I think to myself, oh my goodness, that house is 70 years old. Like 7 years old, Jim. Like houses aren't meant to be standing. They rot, the wood rots, quite frankly, the mold, the insulation deteriorates, quite frankly. I don't even want to get into the health factors that go into the living in one of these homes, because you're living amongst the mold and the rot that's actually creating the home that's standing.
So my thought, Paul, is why can't developers build a new wave of those size of homes on small lots? The demographics are showing more and more young Canadians either have no kids or one kid. You don't need 5 bedrooms. They don't want 4,000 square feet. They want something easy to maintain, easy to clean, easy to heat. And you look up all the bylaws, they have, the federal and the provincial governments have to change municipal bylaws in the country because a lot of the bylaws have minimum square footage for builders. So if you and I are developers, in most communities in Canada, we're not even allowed to build a small home, even if we wanted to present an affordable option to young Canadians.
Well, the funny thing I'm laughing at, right? Because very recently, not too long ago, like this is like a year ago, there were crazy debates about putting more density onto property. Like this is how the world's changed.
The fourplex and sixplexes and stuff.
But even putting on suites.
The accessory dwellings.
Yeah.
Yes.
So putting them in your backyard and doing all this stuff to actually add more density. So think about it. We were so hell bent to actually add more density onto properties that the debates were going the other way. So the interesting part of this is, if you think about it, which for an older Canadian who's still holding their home, this is a real challenge because what we've done is we've actually said, okay, no, I don't want more density. So like Toronto, for example, they were very adamant that people could not add more density into certain areas.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you have a high net worth or high value home, the last thing you want is a bunch of sixplexes in your neighborhood. So they fought it. The older Canadians, the seniors in our communities went out and they got into rallies. They won. They won. And I think it only ended up in 9 places or 9 communities in Toronto, so boroughs or ridings. But so it ended up in 9 places, and still people there are really mad. So now, fast forward to today, values have dropped out. The bylaws, no one's building. You can't afford to build. So this is the conundrum we're in, Jim. So, before COVID, we were building homes at $200 to $300 a square foot.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah. We got into COVID because of the supply, the perceived supply chain challenges. It went up to $300 and $400. I looked today, I went and looked at Ontario Build, and they're now saying they're at $400 to $500 a square foot. So it didn't go down. Nothing ever goes down. The funny thing is, you come out of COVID and you think to yourself, okay, lumber's going to go down, steel's going to go down, drywall's going to go down. My paint costs. Have you painted lately?
My partner, she's the painter, and it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. When I every time my wife and I go to pick up paint, I always say to her, like, and good paint, because you want to paint with good paint. But you go there and you come out of the store and you're like, I remember the day when I used to pick up paint for $10 a gallon.
Forget that. You can't even get a sample for $10 now. So the little paint strips.
Exactly. Just to paint a wall. Yeah. So, you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, now I'm at, let's say for this show, $500 a square foot.
It's staggering.
Right. We got to the point where everyone wanted 4 and 5. You had a hard time selling a 3,500 square foot home.
Oh, because it was too small.
People wanted bigger. People wanted bigger. So they wanted more coverage on their lot. They wanted bigger. So then what the construction world did is they went to 4,000 and 5,000 square feet. So now you're sitting there at today at you're at $500 a square foot. You're at 4,000. So you're at $2 million. The price of land, right? So you're trying to find that 2-bedroom war home that's 70 years old, that has all those issues. You're trying to knock it down. So you're into $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.4 million, whatever you're getting it for. So just to get out of that, you're at $3.4 million and you're trying to resell it. There is no sale market right now for anything over $3 million. In the GTA, if you think you're going to build homes and sell them for more than $3 million, you're nuts.
And think about the other factors.
The market doesn't exist.
Right. And think about the other factors working against you. You have that scenario, which I've heard time and time again, Paul, with everything going on Iran, the price of gas keeps going up and up and up. And Dan McTagg, who was on this channel, predicted it, and it may be even worse than he thinks.
Yeah.
We have interest rates. We have the Bank of Canada said, no, it's not only are we going to hold steady, a lot of economists are thinking we're going to have higher interest rates by the end of the year, means higher mortgages. Yeah. And a lot of the people's wages have not gone up that much in the last 10 years. They've gone up a little, but not as much. They're not to the point of 500 square foot a home.
Yeah. Well, yesterday, the Bank of Canada, did you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Holding steady.
And he had some pretty dire warnings for Canadians about the economy and preparing us. Not only are we not going to drop any interest rates, by the fall, they're probably going to go up again.
Yeah. Well, go back, we were just talking on the previous show about 1990 and the recession and all the things through the Ray days and everything went on and interest rates. We're going back, right? So now you're sitting and you want a starter home because, that's where we started the show. If I can't build a smaller home, I can't afford a larger home.
So where do you do? Where do you go?
Well, you don't want a condo because, quite frankly, we've done condo shows, and condo shows are, let's be serious. The bottom isn't there yet, right?
So maybe a townhouse?
Yes, maybe. Good luck picking up a townhouse.
Yeah.
They're not easy to get right now because people who have them are holding on to them. They're not flipping them out unless they lose them.
And the new ones that they're building in the suburbs start about $550. I've been seeing.
Yeah.
Starting.
But still, construction cost to build a new townhouse development for a developer is crazy still.
Yeah.
And can you get the money for a townhouse? Maybe you can.
Maybe.
Maybe
The
that
bank
is
of mom
saying-
and dad, right?
The bank of mom and dad.
The bank of mom and dad.
But then if you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, is my job stable? Am I going to be here that long? Can I get work here? Am I going to keep the work here? Do I need to actually tie myself to real estate? Because if I have to move and the market's on the downward slope, am I picking it up at the wrong time? So the starter home, this is the interesting part. Now they're not building starter homes.
No.
No, there's no starter homes. So as you know, years ago, we started off, I tell you this story, the old homes were not old enough that I could take them and gut them and then resell them.
Yeah.
That worked, right? I could live in them and then I work my way up. So you start at this level home and then you buy a little higher, then you buy a little higher. So by your fourth home, you have a really nice house.
And you've worked your way up.
You worked your way up.
Yeah.
You can't work your way up now.
No.
So,
In Vancouver, in Toronto, in Montreal, in the biggest cities in the country, that's not an option.
Right. So the interesting part that you're getting at, you do have to try to figure out. Now they've come out with modular homes, and we looked at this.
Yes.
Just coming out of COVID, I had an architect friend of mine. He came to see me and Albert, and we sat down, and he had all kinds of ideas. Right. Albert's from Hong Kong. He's a terrific guy. I'm going to have him on the show. We started brainstorming and he said, I'm going back and I'm going to come back and I have lots of ideas for modular homes and stuff. And he came back with great ideas. We looked at probably 5 different companies. Couldn't get approved in Canada.
Really?
So some of them, just the technology, honestly, it wouldn't pass.
Because it was offshore?
Structurally, the electrical in the homes and how they wire. Don't forget, when they say modular homes, so now they come pre-wired, they come pre-plumbed.
Right.
Like they're coming, you basically.
And then they connect them as they assemble them.
They're like big Lego kits.
Right. Okay.
So they come over as Lego.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out all your wiring. So now you're dealing with other countries and standards that aren't ours. And Canada is not easy to deal with. We do not, our ESA standards for electrical, our plumbing and our permitting standards from the different cities.
They're very high.
They're very high.
Yep.
Anyone who's built a property, it's not, and you hear it from politicians all the time. It's your building inspector, oh my goodness, right?
You don't mess with them.
You have to pray that you get one that's good to work with.
Yeah.
And so far I've been lucky, but I have heard horror stories.
Yes.
And the ESA guys, they do a good job, but they're not easy to deal with, right? From the electrical standards. So, they really make sure that things are tied down. So getting modular homes figured out is very tough.
I will say this. So recently, about 3 weeks ago, my wife and I were at the Toronto Home Show. Home Depot Canada now offers modular homes.
Okay.
I'm not kidding. They're about 550 square feet.
Yep.
And it's a Home Depot, and it's, like you said, it's got the electrical, the plumbing, the lighting. It's got lots of stuff built in. It's almost looks like a trailer home.
Yeah.
But it's a modular home, and you just have the property, and they come in with series of trucks, and they assemble it like the Lego set. So obviously, the different levels of government, Paul, realize we have a crisis in the country, and now all of a sudden you can go on Home Depot Canada, the website, and order your modular home and have it delivered to your property.
I got to give Albert credit because he saw this.
Yeah.
He said, this is where this is going. He said, it's the end of the starter home.
He was
two
right.
things. 2 things he told me coming out of COVID. He said, this is the end of the starter home and the end of the luxury home.
Yeah.
He said, there won't be any more. He said, you won't see any high-end properties. And he said, you won't see any new starter families starting up. So then, Jim, what happens to large communities? Because this is the thing that I can't figure out. And I look at it, and some days I'm driving along and I'm thinking, okay, we brought in a lot of new people. Immigration was high.
Yes.
Now you're mentioning me before the show,
we went down. Stats Canada released it this morning that we lost over 100,000 people in the last 3 months of 2025. Have gone, we're down.
They're leaving.
They're leaving.
Yeah, they're leaving. So we have a net export of people, not importing people.
Yes.
So people are leaving. They're going back home. They're going to other countries. Which, if you think about it, think about all the things happening right now. it only plays into economic migration.
Yes.
It has to, right? Economic migration has to be the impact of these policies that we've put into play.
So that's the prairies, far northern Ontario, the Maritimes, places where a young family, a young couple, a young person can buy a piece of Canada and hopefully get a job and make a decent wage.
Right. So all of a sudden, all these people new to Canada and people who, grew up here, which they have a couple things to deal with. Number one, if my dad's listening to the show, I hope he's not, Dad, because quite frankly, he'd be rolling in, he'd be rolling in, Dad, throwing things at the camera. But, he's always told me, Italian background, you have to do better than we did.
Right.
So that's been the whole, motto, credo of most cultures when they came
for
Canada.
generations.
So now we're saying to our kids, you're not going to do better, demoralizing, quite frankly, and you're not going to live better. So you're going to go back. Remember grandma and grandpa, great grandpa and grandma's home, which was the 2-bedroom with the 1 bathroom on the main floor that everyone used. And remember, we used to go eat dinner in their kitchen, which was their living room.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
the
the
millions of Canadians, that was their life.
I'm with you, but that's a little bit of a mind shift, right? All of a sudden you grew up, my kids, good for them. They had it good, quite frankly, but I always made sure, because I like to build and I always build my own stuff. I always made sure they had their own bathroom and their own bedroom. I spoiled the heck out of them, quite frankly, because I didn't want them to live like I lived, which was in my parents' home where we all shared. We had I remember one bathroom in the house, right? And, we'd have to line up. We'd have to line up. There was 4 of us in the house. I had one sister, and we used to line up. And I remember my dad coming home one day and he said to me, "I'm ready." I said, "What are we ready for, Dad?" He says, "Your uncle and I are going to build the shower downstairs." Right? I'm like, "Oh my goodness." I was like, oh, you know what I mean? So, and so it was a big deal. We did a whole christening of the bathroom, and everyone came over to see it.
Look at it.
But it was a big deal, right? And we gravitated there. And, then as you grew up, you thought to yourself, okay, I'm going to do better than him. I'm going to make sure all the kids,
bathrooms.
I'm going to make sure all the kids have their own bathroom. They're going to have a guest bathroom. Then as we started buying houses, okay, I'm going to put in spa features, and I was very proud of that. It was like a really good, and I was happy to do it. Now I got to go back to my kids and say,
you're not going to have that.
Hey, you're going to the double wide. So Don, who works with me in the other company, when I went down to, and I saw this in the States, I went down when I met him in Oklahoma, he says to me, "Why don't you come over for dinner?" Right? I go over for dinner, and him and his 4 girls are living in a double wide trailer.
Yeah.
Right. And then he bought a house, and then he had a nice house at the end. But you know what? He was kind of, he'd come out of the military. He was looking where to go next. So he started there as kind of a starter place, and then he grew, right? And quite frankly, it's interesting to see we're going back. Are there going to be double wides? Are we going to park trailer? Are we getting to the point where we're going to actually buy property as property falls in value
and put trailers on there?
Yeah, put mobile trailer home, like literally. Well, they're modular, right?
Yeah,
so it's just another modular. You skirt them; they don't look like.
No, this is interesting. You bring this up, Paul, and it's such a good point about. For years and generations, it was the kids doing a little bit better job, better salary, better home. Oxford University this week just released their yearly happiness study. They do an in-depth study countries around the world. For people 25 years of age and younger, Finland is rated the happiest country. Canada's gone from 7th to 25th.
Oh, wow.
So Canada, for years, you think how happy we are to live here. Young people 25 and under are ranked 25th in the world as far as happiness. And you can't tell me that the inability for a lot of young Canadians to buy a starter home that their grandparents and parents had is not part of the factor.
Well, it is. But, if you look at it, it's interesting. We've gone from, you're talking about happiness. The previous show I was talking about was 4-day work weeks. I was going through the theory of why we're thinking about it and why we can't do it. And I went through the productivity stats of Canada for developed countries, 32 developed countries. We're actually last now. We're in 32nd place out of 32.
Really?
By 2030, we're projected to fall out of the developed country list.
That's frightening, Paul.
Yeah, the number of factors that they
Yeah.
Accumulate to figure out if you're a developed country or not, an OEDC country. We're about to fall out of it. So you look at it, you know, your happiness quotient, and you look at your productivity quotient. You know, if I can't shelter myself, be busy and productive, make enough income, how the heck can I be happy?
Yeah.
Who am I? What goals am I achieving? Because, you know, man, you know, again, another Italian expression. I'm killing you with these, but now
I love them.
man is meant to be going uphill. Man,
That's interesting.
Humans are meant to have an uphill battle.
Yeah.
And that uphill battle is what makes them happy. They're, you know, people, you know, longevity, people who live in communities that are on a hill live 10 years more or longer than the average person who lives on flat land.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
It's one of the, you know, centurion facts.
Cool.
When they go to countries, and they found that out. And it's because people like the challenge, any challenge. And as if it's a physical challenge of getting to the top of the hill, if it's a physical challenge of owning a home, having a family, those are all the things that make people happy and therefore make them live longer. Having a community is another one, quite frankly. And if you can't have a home and you can't structure in a place, it's really hard to have a community.
And this is my concern for Canada as a country. For years, we heard about American cities who lost a lot of their young, bright people who left the core of the city and went to either the far suburbs, other communities to get ahead, to get a start.
Yeah.
And Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, the big cities of Canada, we're in danger of losing our best and brightest young people who can go on realtor.ca like the rest of us. And they can go, you know what? I can get a job in this community, in this province, and be able to live. I'm going there. And they'll leave.
Well, the interesting part is, I know, and this is the challenge for large cities right now. Okay, so we can't build starter homes. We can't build luxury homes. So now if I'm sitting there and I want a better life for my family, I am looking for outlier areas to move to, whether they're in Canada or outside of Canada.
Yeah.
So now I'm starting to look around saying, okay, I have this skill set. This skill set is wanted. I'm a welder fitter. Oh, the U.S. needs welder fitters, right? I can move to, okay, Colorado. Oh, Colorado's beautiful.
Or you can go to Thunder Bay because they're building
Or go to Thunder Bay. So now I have a decision point and I make that, okay, I leave, right? They go out and they say, okay, we're going to let 4 more people come into Canada. But those 4 more people who are coming into the major city can't afford to buy anything. So they have to start the struggle all over again. So off they go, and they're trying to move through the, you know, they're doing great. They're trying to move along.
Excuse me. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. Sorry, Paul. You know, it's a great point because my grandfather came to the country in the 1920s from Germany with like $20 Canadian in his pocket.
Yeah.
And that's the old immigrant story. You show up on the shores
Yes.
with not a lot. You have a work ethic and a desire to become Canadian and build a life here.
But he bought. So what he did is he started out in a rental property, probably had 2 people in the rental property. Then when he got enough money, he put a down payment on. He got his first starter home. He was probably good with his hands. So he kind of struggled through, put his own roof on, shingled, did all kind of the hard labor to get that house to a point. Then that new family who was coming behind him bought that house off him. He moved one up, right? And then until he got to in his life, he only got to the 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. You know, like
Yeah.
maybe did better. I don't know, but
No, I was going to, when you're done, I was going to tell you actually what he did.
Okay.
He was a meat packer and a meat cutter, Canada Packers. He took the pallets they were throwing out, took the nails out, and used the wood to build his own home.
Wow.
In Halifax.
Oh my goodness.
And he used dry seaweed for insulation.
See?
And so now, in a lot of ways, we're going full circle, Paul, to people, small homes, modular homes, building their own place, going to remote communities in Canada so they can have a place to live.
Well, and I'm with you. But then what happens to the major cities? So that's where they erode.
Well, how could their tax base is going to go?
Well, of course, because their tax base goes down.
Yeah.
We're even starting. See, this is the slippery slope that I worry about. And I've said it on other shows. when I start seeing municipalities going, we're just going to waive development fees. I'm like, okay, you're going to waive.
Because the city of Vaughan, north of Toronto, just did that.
Oh, Mississauga just did it.
Yeah, so a number of communities
we're
have
going
done
to
that.
waive. Oh, we did a show, and actually all of Canada has done it.
Oh, is that right?
Everywhere, right
Okay.
across Canada. The communities across Canada have done it in every single province territory, have waived development fees.
Interesting.
So now they're waiving development fees. That's fine. You might get stuff built, but quite frankly, your infrastructure starts to erode. So now, as people have to economically or socially start to migrate because they want a better life, a happier life,
Yes.
they leave the cities. Then you have a tax base that is lower coming behind them because they're starting
Bingo.
again, right? So you not only have the infrastructure eroding, you have the cost, the income base eroding. So you have the perfect storm for what do you have? You have erosion of your major cities. You have crime, because quite frankly, it doesn't make sense to have, as all these things are happening and you can't get into the starter home, at some point you start to say, okay, is it worth me working really hard? Because if I don't need to work very hard, I start to work off the social system. I work off the social system. It's erosion of your major cities.
I don't think this is I hear a lot of the platitudes and the word salads from the politicians about we're going to do this and do that. And I'm talking mayors, regional councilors, premiers and prime ministers and politicians. But I have yet to see like logical, concrete plans, how to build something, work with builders, work with the municipalities and build something that is semi-affordable for families. I've yet to see it, Paul.
Well, the funny thing is, and Mike's kind of taken me through it. Mike's son, he's married to a lovely English lady. So he went back to the wedding, and he came back and he says to me, "You got to look what they're doing in the UK." The UK is ahead of us, of course, older country, quite frankly, more experienced. They've already been through a lot of this.
Absolutely.
The erosion of the cities and everything happening in the suburbs and jobs and economic migration. So what they started doing, and this is the king and the crown, they've actually started building these communities with different levels of housing. Starter levels, mid levels, higher levels. And they've integrated them.
That's awesome.
They've integrated them with schools and parks.
Great.
But they've done this through a planning scenario. So I go nuts, Jim. I got to tell you, I go absolutely batty when I listen to these municipalities talk about building another park, building another convention center, building another music theater that doesn't get used. Whole many music theaters don't get used. I think to myself, are we so far out of touch that we don't know where we're at in this spectrum? Like, I think they've lost touch with where they're at. So they got to stop, and they should be saying, okay, we need to build not the amenities anymore. We're not at amenity level. No. A lot of them are older politicians. So here's the challenge. Here's what we're going through. They're older, so they're thinking of themselves, and I get it. People are deep down, we're all selfish to a certain extent, and we start to think of ourselves. Well, they think, when I was growing up, I like pools and parks and theaters and this and that.
Because this is the way it used to be.
This is the way it used to be. And if we build those, we'll make people happy because they'll come sing and dance. No, we're not there anymore, guys. What's going to make people happy right now is a beautiful starter home.
With access to transit.
That is safe.
Yes, and you can use mass transit to get to school and shopping and work. And it's an ability to get places. I know I'm in Newmarket, north of Toronto, and there's a huge infrastructure project going on Yonge Street. For people in Canada who don't know, Yonge Street goes from the shores of Lake Ontario. It's the longest street in the world, and they have to redo water mains and sidewalks that are 50, 60 years old because that's core infrastructure that has to be done. Look what's happening in Calgary.
Which is we're waiving development fees of developers not taking revenue to maintain the infrastructure of that street.
But how is Calgary, one of the biggest and most developed cities in North America, have water main breaks every week? It's unbelievable to me.
We did a show on the erosion of the infrastructure of Calgary based on the age and the correlation to salt use.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We did that show. And quite frankly, but it's everywhere in Canada. We all get
Everywhere.
winter. It's all eroding. And
We have no choice but to, like, every 5 to 10 years, do major infrastructure work. We don't have a choice.
But
look at the roads and potholes in this country after this winter this year.
But I guess, Jim, where I'm going with this, the models globally across the world that have done this, whether we go to the UK, whether we go to Italy, whether we go to Switzerland or Sweden, are happening. So, and I bring this up, and I'm sorry, I sound like a broken record, but on every bloody show, come on, let's get a plan together and figure this out, because people are already doing it.
Let's look at countries. I don't care what country it is, what community, what continent it is. Here's what they did. Let's adapt it, use it, make it our own.
Yeah.
And go, hey, there's a subway stop, there's a bus stop, there's a school, there's shopping, there's the starter, the mid. Let's lay it out and work together. There's too much intelligence and money and acumen in this country not to make something like that possible. I can't imagine.
I'm with you. We've done private-public partnerships before. We've made them work.
Yeah.
Let's do more.
Let's do more. That's why we watch Paul. He's got all the answers.
Patriotic means looking out for each other and fixing things together.
True patriotism is being in the country you love, surrounded by people you love, and great weather.
Being a patriot is being a part of your community and caring for it.
It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. Patriotism is the one thing we all share.
It's okay to be critical of government and still be a patriot.
It's gratitude to your country.
Of course I'm a patriot. I'm Canadian. It's my home.
Well, actually, true patriot love is the mission.